Greetings, Sanbonani, Dumelanye, Absheni, hello out there once again. It's your boy AK and Mr. Muela back again with another episode of the Real Talk with AK. And on this one here, we're actually talking about a sensitive matter, my man. Whatever again, what you wanna lead this my low, it's Allah. So we're gonna be talking about racism. We're gonna be because like hey, as you might have witnessed over the last few months, that there has been like a lot of racism cases, and like South Africa actually has a racism problem, and it's a major problem at the moment, and it's something that only given attention when there are such cases in most cases. I can start thinking we had a long day.
That actually arise.
Yeah, you see. So, without wasting any further time, my man, like, I would actually like us for this episode to actually try to find like the root of all these things. Like, how can we address this issue of racism? Because as you are aware of the recent scandal Sanandos with Gareth Cliff, you see. Mm-hmm. So before we start the episode, I would actually like to find out what's your view on like your identity Nando say with Gareth Cliff and Johnston Hazel.
The entire Nando's thing, it's one thing. What I've noticed is that in South Africa we've had quite a number of adverts that actually came out racist. And they are removed just as quick as they are put on the net. Now, the question becomes, in that particular advert, who stood the most to gain? As to whether it was advertised or not. As to whether it was publicized. Okay, it was publicized, yes. But as for the duration of how it was supposed to last, I don't think it would have lasted quite a long time. But it might have recruited certain things because number one, once you start talking about Johnston Hazen, you're talking about a political leader. And we all know this thing of racism has been quite a big thing in South Africa. And it still is. It still is. Still this problem. So, I don't know, but there are quite a number of things that tend to stand out. Apart from the fact that Nando's is just a brand, it's just a franchise that's trying to recruit people. But sometimes you need to look at who's being recruited in order to do these adverts. Right. And who stands to gain at that particular point in time.
You know, when it comes to certain issues, especially with racism, I won't lie. I always say this, like, especially us as a respect people, we are quick to use the racism card
on other races.
Meanwhile, we are also tribalists. You see, basically, we are quick to rush to address racism, but we are failing to address our own internal affairs.
Exactly.
That's why we still have this issue of us calling outsiders foreigners.
Exactly. Even this riot, the riots in KZN, where people are like Amazon.
Amazon.
Yes.
Segregation. You know, I'm a Tonga, and in most cases, I'm a Tonga speaking person. And like, I've been subjected to like, what's this? Tribalism.
Yes.
Then that nigga like 11, for sure, he can tell you, he has heard this story, so like, even during xenophobia, we were classified as foreigners. You see such things. So this thing is there. So my main point is that like, we can't address the issue of racism before we address Tabaya tribalism, because this is where everything starts.
But the question, I guess the big question, AK, that we need to ask is, what's the root of racism? What's the root of tribalism? And why are all these things rooted in such a level that people segregate themselves so much and build such a large boundary that it's become so difficult to actually have an open mind about something that comes. Because even people still react awkward and weird to even albinos.
Yeah. That's the
regardless as to whether they talk in English or whatever, they still have that particular thing.
But I think that has to do with traditional norms in most cases, because if we look back to history over the past years, that albinos were actually considered to be associated with witchcraft, such things. I'm not saying they still are or anything, but because in a village, like if like maybe an albino child was given birth to, usually never bolai. Then that is from Venda, he knows about this culture too. Like it's there, this thing, and it's still a problem to now because some of these non-sexual tribalism. For instance, if we're gonna go back and look at the history, Tsongas and Zulus, you see, but when I believe more, that's why like it exists in most cases.
Yeah, but because the moment you start mentioning racism, tribalism, and all these other segregatory terms between either color or tradition or culture, then we need to question whether the problem is within the mind or is the problem within the actual conduct of these things. Like for an example, I remember one time when we had a xenophobic issue. Yes, we had a xenophobic issue. In fact, the most recent one that actually sufficed. And there was a time where they actually interviewed foreign countries. By foreign countries, I'm referring to people from Kenya and all these things and so on and so forth. And whenever we say xenophobia, the first people whom we label are Nigerians.
And I think it's because of their association with like the drug industry in most cases. And we tend to forget that it's not all Nigerians. It's more like us South Africans. We have gangsters, we have thieves, tsotsis, nyopes, but it's not all South Africans at the end of the day. That's one thing we are failing to get as citizens. Like this self-hate, it's a problem. Because even when we want to address the issue of racism, how will they take us serious when we don't take ourselves serious, when we are still hating on each other?
But now you're reaching a very sensitive point. Because when you start mentioning black on black hate or something like that, we need to understand that black people, for should I say centuries, we've been victim to slavery, we've been victim to oppression and a number of things. And so when you start giving everyone who had been subjected to slavery and these things freedom, the first thing that they want to do is regather everything that was taken from them. And as a result, if you gather more resources than I do, that's where this black on black hate comes into play, because of now you have more than me, but we both were, should I say, freed in the same time at the same level. But how you start to push yourself and how I start to push myself becomes different, and that's where individuality comes into play. So I think the notion of racism, tribalism, and all these things, it's a psychological aspect. And it's been happening for years, even till this day. And the question becomes, how do we break it? How do we break it? If we're still capable of pointing out that's racist, then that means you still have a long way to go.
Yeah, because, I think it was last year or the year before when AfriForum actually announced that they were building an African speaking only university. And you saw how black people were quick to attack AfriForum. And I just sat down and then I was like to myself, sometimes because at the end of the day, and then now we start protesting for the privilege, right? Privilege. While we are also capable of doing such things. But right now, as blacks, for instance, when we stop fair like these groups they can actually form a black-owned bank. Such things. You see, that's why I'm going with this thing. Because sometimes, we tend to use this racism card in situations that we are not even supposed to be using it.
It's not even applicable in most situations.
Yes.
It's not even applicable in most situations.
it's not like did any air leaks over the hair issue. Like, a lot of companies have been doing this over countless years. Even like, is it Nando's, KFC, go for it. They have this culture, for instance, how I share one solar, where like, in most cases, the edits are they are based, but criticize black ministers or like any such things. But how the corruption scandals involving the core? You won't see such ads.
Things are quiet.
Yeah.
Things are quiet. And when you start speaking about opening up banks, I wanna know if maybe you know. Yeah. Haven't you noticed that when banks advertise loans?
I see where you're going. I see.
When banks advertise loans in South Africa, let's not talk about the global scale because we do not know how they advertise at the global scale. When banks advertise loans in South Africa, who are the people that they use to attract more people?
It's a black person. If it's a mortgage in family planning, they'll show you a white person, maybe another family.
Yes.
And then with like the diapers and everything, maybe a white family have an advertiser maybe for a black daddy. You get that it's only the mother and the child. So in a way they are promoting that in area for like this thing at the single parent.
Yeah.
It exists. We are not pointing fingers towards anyone. We're just having a convo, by the way.
Because there's a bank that I was reading at the time, and apparently this article was written by a white journalist. I'm just going to highlight white to indicate that not everyone is for this thing of segregation, but they want everyone to be balanced at an equal level, which is one particular thing, and that is in situations like that, when a bank that I was reading about, this guy says, so this particular bank is guilty for racism in an indirect manner.
A lot of things have been going.
And here's why. The well-known banks charge an interest rate of 2 to 4% higher on black people than what they would on white people.
When we're on that, there's also an article that I read about that, but it was relating to mortgage.
Yes.
Where like, these popular banks.
Yes, I think we are referring to the same thing.
Where like, they are making like a black person pay 3 times more than a white person when it comes to houses. For instance, Shaba, let's look at the house that we are currently in. These houses took our parents more than 20 years to pay.
Exactly.
Just because of their color of their skin.
Exactly.
But if that person is white, this house would have taken like maybe 5 years.
Exactly.
7 years.
And the question becomes why? So we all know that, and I think we are developing a culture where black people or Africans, because there's nothing wrong with black people, Africans. Even if you write a form, it says AF. No longer says B. So when us as Africans have developed the norm of the koloto.
Yes.
Exactly, and that's the one thing that we are absorbed by immensely, and that's why these banks are actually taking such steps. They are not only looking at the color of the skin, but they're also looking at occupations and the probability that you actually could succeed in all these things. So the question becomes, at what point does the root of racism end?
I don't think there'll ever be an end to this thing. Unless us, if there's a race, are actually willing to unite. And in most cases, that's not something at the moment I see happening, because like we are competing against one another instead of like joining hands and moving towards one cause. We only unite for like one day. For instance, Shabella, over all these racism cases, we have had chances to put a stop to this thing. But the only reason we haven't is because of what? We give it attention for like a week or so, and then we move. That's the culture.
Even schoolgirls or girls, should I say, girls' schools, not schoolgirls, girls' schools.
Yeah.
They also have this racism issue, there have been a number of schools that actually went on media, not just social media, but on the media, explaining and talking about this thing called racism for the mere fact that they're not supposed to braid their hair like this and like that. And the remarks that came out are not always the most pleasant remarks that anyone could ever look for. But it becomes a question of at what point does it end? I mean, I've been in a school that is predominantly white for 9 years. And I won't lie, racism is not a genetic thing.
Yeah.
It's not passed on. It's
something you teach.
It's something you teach. Yeah. And how these people change. Like I've been in how the kids, should I say white kids, change when they start to understand, they start to contextualize racism and society, and they start to integrate slowly. It becomes a problem. It becomes a problem.
Even at like a tertiary institution, this thing is still there in most cases. It's only those few white people who you'll find hanging with like black people and that.
Yeah.
But in most cases, these people tend to group themselves. It's more like people are segregated within the institution without even realizing, because in most cases you find there's a specific race hanging by themselves, and then there's the black race doing things. You see, like such bad. It's only those few ones. So like we still have a long way to go.
And I won't lie, my man, this thing has been going on for years. I'm talking about personal experience. This is from personal experience. For example, they've been talking about this thing of transformation and racism in cricket.
Yeah, recently.
The
guy who refused to kneel down.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw the story.
They talked about racism in that particular point, and now let's start making. Okay, let's go deeper. Yeah, let's talk about racism in sports. This thing is not even a national
thing. It's actually deep.
It's a global thing. Yeah, it's a global thing. Raheem Sterling from England even complained. And now let's start to ask this big question, which is: at what point do we start questioning the capabilities of a black person to a white person? For an example, we shouldn't be fooled just because Siya Kolisi is black in color and he's the captain of South Africa. Let's talk about development. Let's talk about development from the root of the region. Does the transformation that they're trying to display at national level to the Springbok translate to the same transparency that is happening at lower levels? You understand what I mean? It's easy for them to just take black, bench you all and then play a couple of blacks, and then the rest are like, keep on playing. You understand what I mean? So it's situations where you often wonder at what point does this thing end. So that's what I'm saying. From a personal experience, racism, it's a global issue.
For instance, recently England was playing in the final. In December, the final
isn't it Italy?
It was Italy. Do you remember what happened after the game where England people actually started attacking the Italians because of like their riding? Even black people, like they just started attacking like everyone that was there, from black people and everything. Like racism is actually a global issue. It's a pandemic on its own.
Exactly.
It's a pandemic on its own.
Exactly.
We can even go back to both George Floyd and everything. So, like, I don't know, man. How do we, like, from your own point of view, like, do you think there's a solution to this? Because not, like I said on my side, we still have a long way to go. You see, I don't know about you, Jorge. If you think there's a way that we can use to actually give this matter more attention.
I won't lie. The more we point it out and deal with it, the more it becomes ignored, and it's primarily because of time. Why am I saying time? Remember, our democracy is still young, 27 years and going, and the question becomes, how should I say hereditary it is? How people tend to inherit this thing called racism. There are still places in, for example, the Northwest that are segregated for white people.
Well, we're still on that. When you're done, I would actually like to find out your view, Caribbean area or
Okay. So, and then there is other places that do this. And I won't lie, if the generation that actually went through apartheid pass, and the children that were born from 1994 up to probably the year 2000 pass, then that is where things will actually start unfolding far better in terms of racism. Because I won't lie, I was in an Afrikaans school.
Yeah.
Before the school actually started becoming multiracial, it was Afrikaans. And the kids there, and I'm being honest, the kids, when I started in grade 1, the kids were taught that don't touch a black person, you're going to get cancer.
Yeah.
That's what they said. They said, don't touch a black person, you're going to get cancer. And these kids, because they're kids, that's messed up. They're kids at the age of 7. They actually pop up and they say, and when you as a black child are actually trying to greet a white child, you know, you're so intrigued, you want to touch their hair, you want to touch their skin, to understand how different are you guys from one another. And they're like, no, don't touch me because they told me that if you touch me, I'm actually going to get cancer.
Yeah, that's messed up.
And you started to realize that, as I grew up, I started to realize that this thing is becoming more and more psychological. And if you can contaminate a child at a very young age, psychologically, this thing is bound to spread and it's going to stay rooted going further. But as we grew up with these kids, they were capable of touching us, they were capable of hugging us and all these things and so on and so forth. And at some point, as a child who was born just before 94 or that, or even after 94 or something like that, you start to be like, it's a privilege to actually go to school with white people. Exactly. It's a privilege to go to school with a white person. And when it's not actually a privilege, it's just an opportunity to actually advance yourself educationally.
I think the problem with us as a race, we look at these people as gods, we still look at them like bad in most cases.
And why?
That's the question we're gonna leave for the real talkers out there. If you have an answer for this one, you might walk away with 30 gig, by the way. So do hit us up on our social media platforms if you think you do have a solution to this issue. My man, let's move on, my man, you know. Because recently, I think it was last month, I was on Twitter and then I came across this article.
Okay.
I don't know if you have heard of this place, a place called Orania.
Is it the place where they actually wanted to make their own capital?
Yeah, I was about to go there. It's more like they want to separate the Cape from like the rest of South Africa. They actually made an application for that.
Okay.
And then that's why I actually saw even black people being like, hey, and that's when even ministers actually wanted to give attention to this issue. Like, you know, today, I'm still wondering, how is it possible to have a country within a country that has its own president, its own currency, and they are the most racist people? You won't pass there by your car.
But that's where we start to ask the question. Why would they actually want to do that? Is it because of blacks? Or is it because of, should I say mismanagement of resources that are given the responsibility of black people? You need to start asking that question. Because they might make it racial, and only to find out that the root cause is actually political.
Yeah.
Or even if it is racial, the question becomes, why are you making it so personal?
Well, from my point of view, I feel like I personally believe that these people actually still believe on that whole apartheid constitution, that system. These are people that actually went back to Orania after like ANC took power. They were like, we are going back. as like recently, I came across this interview on YouTube where this Afrikaner was like, when they announced the expropriation of land without compensation,
Yes.
his farm got taken.
Okay.
And then they gave it back to like the actual owners, the original owners, which was black people. And then he decided to go back to Orania.
Okay.
You see, like and that's why I realized, so like, nah, these people actually still believe in all those old laws that existed. So like, how do we address this issue at Orania? How do you think our leaders can go about addressing this issue? Because nah, man, it's wrong. We can't be having a country that's within a country using their own currency. I just said ID.
But that's the thing. If they actually wanted to be a country within a country, why don't they just move from the country in which they have a problem with? These people are trying to find, they're trying to find a way to bend black minorities who control the most resources within the country to their will. Now let's start there. You want to apply it to your country within a country and you want your own currency. And at what point would your currency be recognized at that particular point in time? These people are just being racial about the matter, and these people of Orania and all these things, whether we like it or not, here's the funny part about racism, even with regards to them. Whether they own farms, whether they own land, or whatever it is, when they trade with money that they get from black people. You buy, whether you buy potatoes, tomatoes, or
the
something.
main problem that we have with them, those people who they have however these resources
For themselves.
Yeah, for themselves. That's why it's possible for them to have a country within a country.
But the question becomes, in situations like this, are we learning from white people?
No, we're not. That's
Because I feel as though we're so quick at pointing fingers and not learning from them.
It all goes back to the point I made earlier on that we're too quick to play the racism card while forgetting. Barekana, when you're pointing someone, 3 fingers are looking back at you. That's an African proverb.
Exactly. So I can only wonder, but all I can say is that this racism thing and the segregation that happened and that took place, it's making brothers fight amongst each other. And I won't lie, and this is to the real talkers, I want you guys to understand one particular thing, which is if brothers fight amongst each other, someone is bound to inherit the inheritance of these two brothers. Not one of the brothers, someone outside of the family line is going to inherit these, the inheritance of these brothers. And I think that's where the problem started. We were so busy fighting ourselves and fighting each other during the time of Boshaka and all these things that by the time the unfiltered and company came, it became a problem
for us to
exactly. And so we start to question our history, and we know very little about our history as Africans.
We only know what they want us
to know. And I guess the question becomes, did we try to learn from them? And did they realize that we're actually learning from them, and then they decided to take a different step? But racism is a big thing, my man, and I think it's psychological in most cases. As for the Orania people, they'll come back. Whether they like it or not, they'll still be South Africans.
And then there was also this scandal, was it? I think it's discovered, and it's not even a company, where like black people they were being overcharged. Like my man, how do we get these big companies to actually stop exploiting black people? Because I feel like these huge corporations and companies are actually exploiting black people. In most cases, you can find that when as black as I am, I have to go to Skela for that 12 years plus another 5 years or 4 years, university. And then I get a company and you find that my manager is white. That person does not even have matric.
Exactly. And now you start to wonder one thing, which is if resources are shared amongst white people as there are amongst black people, we need to start wondering why President Thabo Mbeki actually pioneered this thing of affirmative action.
Yeah. Because
affirmative action was a big thing, and affirmative action, I won't lie, when it was implemented White people were like, they're taking black people because they're black, and they're prioritizing black people because they're black.
Triple BEE.
Exactly. And instead, the affirmative action was just an action that was taken to correct imbalances of the past. Yeah. Meaning the white privilege thing that happened in the past, and now we're giving black people white privilege first, and all these things, and then white people will come because of they've had these resources.
Yeah, you still have them, so we are trying to redistribute them.
Exactly.
And it's something like, I won't lie, but it's because of our leaders in most cases. We are failed by our leaders.
Exactly. So you can only wonder at what point does all of this thing end, but all I can say is that it's quite a big thing, and these companies that actually overcharge black people, we need to start wondering, number one, who are the shareholders and stakeholders of this company, and then what's the, should I say, the proportion of black to white, and why they overcharge these things. I won't lie. I'm going to be honest.
Yeah.
When you go through finances of most companies, you find that black people have to be written off more than white people.
Yeah.
It's easy to take a loan as a black person. It's difficult to pay it back.
Yeah.
And I think if you remember, there was an incident that occurred where an old lady, by the age of 60 something, Nahola grant the government. She went to go and apply for a loan at Nedbank.
Sure.
And is it Nedbank? I can't remember. And they granted her a loan. And then that bank actually wanted to repossess the assets that recognized her receipts and all these things. And when they went to court, they turned out that you actually gave this person a loan when you realized that they didn't qualify for it. But when you think about it deeply, they gave this person a loan because of
they wanted like the asset. And like that's something that people actually fail to learn, because we've seen a lot of houses being repossessed by banks because of such things.
Even COVID-19 lockdown, the cars that were repossessed at the time.
Right now, like on Twitter, I saw this celeb whose car got like a repossessed because of like, okay, the guy you see, like people are actually failing to make ends meet.
Exactly.
And instead of like trying to look for problems as a race, what we did was to laugh and criticize. Like, a black person, I'll never understand that about us. That's why I said, like, I don't think we can address racism before we address
tribalism.
Tribalism.
Even
This
black
on black hate.
Mm.
Because, like, that's where the main problem lies. Black people celebrate each other's downfall, and that's something I'll never understand as a race.
Even till today.
We talk about Ubuntu, we can talk about it like, we are pushing the spirit of Ubuntu, but we choose our battle. That's the thing. It's more like right now with the recent incident, the one I was referring to, Yabo Nandos and the social activists. Like, we choose these topics for attention AKAY. And racism actually exists to such a core that there's even places where you are not even to buy a house as a black person just because of the skin of your country.
Yeah. Even the labeling of people. For example, if you speak Tsonga, they're not gonna call you Tsonga, Uyishanga. And they made the term look so, they ridiculed it so much and so bad
it became a norm.
It became a norm. And even you guys had to accept that at some point in saying Uyishanga.
I will tell you, call me a Shanga and I will tell you, I'll correct you, I'm a Tsonga.
Exactly. And they even made it to a point, I think you and Daniel could actually relate. They made the line so fine between the difference between the Tsonga speaking person and the Venda speaking person.
My man,
and if you date someone outside of your cultural norm, like maybe a Tswana, a Xhosa or something like that, the people within that particular, should I say, culture or tradition, or people who are Tswana speaking or that particular, they would say, why Ojolali?
It's not like the last too much. Okay, it might be a joke, but that thing is actually offensive. I won't lie though. It might be a joke, but it's offensive. You know, like, like just because it's
It's stereotypes. It's stereotypes. But on a deeper level, Shem, I won't lie. You're right about one thing. We cannot tackle racism if we haven't tackled tribalism.
Yeah.
And I think once we can unite as black people, then we can actually see where we're going. But as for the mere fact that the most recent thing that actually erupted was the riots that happened in KZN.
Yeah, the phonics.
Yes, and people were like, Amasu.
And there were even like other races.
There were even other races.
Because like KZN is not only about Zulus. Even some speaking people are there, Venas are there, like different tribes are there. So like this thing, Jacob, like we tend to label things, say
Exactly.
And that's something we need to stop. Yeah, man, I think let's just take a short break, Wabo. Then we'll come back refreshed, man. It's hot today and this lights
they are burning.
Yeah, they are burning.
So
don't forget that we actually raised a topic for y'all real talkers out there. Like, how can we address this issue of racism and tribalism in South Africa? How do you think we can get people to start paying attention to this? Because this is not like a problem that's facing a country. It's a global issue. And then, if you do have the answer, you can reach out on social media platform using the hashtag Real Talk With AKAY or the hashtag The People's Podcast with your own point of view or perspective of what you think, how we can actually address these issues. Apart from that, we'll be back after a few minutes. Hang in there, siyabuya kwamanje man. And we are back again, guys. Hey, we are back from our short break. And while we are still on it, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Hey, we actually need that number. Don't just be viewing there and like it. Leave a comment. Let us know what you think.
Number one.
Whatever. We are all together in this thing. We are still on the path of addressing social issues that exist within our community while seeking practical solutions for them. Hey. And my man, before we went to the break, I actually wanted to ask you something, and with regards to the SA legal system and the international laws when it comes to addressing the issue of racism. Do you think that the current laws that are put in place are actually effective, or they are just there as a front?
Because I remember when you actually said, just right now when you actually introduced the viewers to the segment, you said seeking practical solutions.
Yeah.
The question becomes, is it actually practical? Are the laws actually, the practicality of them, do they actually work? And it turns out that you'd say freedom of speech.
Yeah.
But when you say racism, if someone actually throws the K word right now, and the video circulates, I saw freedom of speech.
Yeah.
I saw freedom of speech. And the question becomes, how one-sided is racism now?
Because it also goes back to this thing of us as black people too, when it comes to marriages. You have heard those cases where, as a black person, I fall in love with a white person. It becomes a problem. I don't want to be there talking English, so I don't want the white person. They don't know our culture, such things. While forgetting Korobatoba, they can also learn as human beings.
Exactly.
So, I feel like when it comes to racism, that's why I was like, we give it special treatment while forgetting we are part of the problem.
Exactly.
Because we are also racist somehow, some way.
I mean, think about it. Think about it in this particular way. You go out, you spend your time wherever you spend your time. You come back with a Chinese girl. I'm aggravating this. I'm actually aggravating the situation. Not white, not colored, Chinese, China.
I can imagine.
and you walk in with her, and you're introducing her to the family. The society in which you live in, they're like, how the hell are they going to look at you right now? Do they respect you?
Oh, shut the shine. Shut in. You know those stereotypes, Kokas.
Yes, and then after that it becomes, manje somlobola kanjani.
Chapalia.
You understand? Even when we talk about lobola and we describe it to white people, we're saying down payment. Down payment to what?
But I want to, in a way, I actually like this thing. What black gents are doing, when they want to run away from lobola, they tend to get married to white people. That's why I feel like that's why we see like these racial marriages in most cases.
But now the question becomes, how sustainable are they?
And it can also go back to issue ya Katlego Maboa, because she was dating someone who has who's white in skin color. That nigga got cancelled from shows because of that person was white. But if it was two black people, I'm definitely sure that there would have been a different outcome.
And I guess it's primarily because racism will forever be endorsed by certain things and certain people. And I guess, I won't lie, white people are not as open to interracial marriages or relationships as black people are. Yeah. I won't lie. Ratadilo, bra. And also at the time, maybe you're taking Gamla to a stroll around gas. Gents are gonna crazy. Yeah.
All the women are gonna hate you.
They're gonna hate you. Because the question becomes, if you're going for a white person, what the hell are we? What the hell are we? Because that's how black women are gonna feel.
Yeah.
What the hell are we? If you're going to go for a white person, see that's none.
For instance, when the show started, I was making fun of Tapedu. So
At
the end of the day, it's all about preference. And it's one, also the women marry someone and their lifestyle I wanna
now the question becomes, who's gonna get the hardest hit? Let's say you're a black dude and you fall in love with a white girl, and you both are introducing each other to your family. Let's say maybe your family is open to this relationship, and you have to go to the other side.
That's why they want to know which business you are involved in, how much you are earning, if it will be able to sustain their daughter.
Because black people do not believe in generational wealth.
That's where the problem is at. And because we don't believe in it, that's why you see these protests where we are always quick to play the white privilege card, white privilege card, everything, white privilege card. The adversity, there's actually white people who are using NSFAS, but you won't say it. A black person will be using NSFAS, while there's actually another black child who actually needs that. 4,000. Those are can you get a registration fee on its own, but we are using that. This thing goes back to
but I guess to prove how broad this racism thing is, it even reaches a point whereby, I remember this one time, and I think I told you this incident, but I'm just going to share it with a real talker. And I was in high school. I got a scholarship at one particular school in Joburg. No, I don't want to mention the school, but I got a scholarship in that school, and I enjoyed my time there. And the majority of the school was actually predominant in black people, but they were not just black people; they were black people who at least had some form of class. Not always, not all of them, but most. And so we got there, and I was shocked when I bumped into Chinese. That there were Chinese people amongst black people in terms of school and everything. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. And socialize with them and all these things. They were quite socially awkward. I guess it's because of the stereotype they're already carrying in that. But black people were just treating everyone as though they're the same, because of the same environment is already predominant in black. And so this Chinese guy actually is new in the school, comes in, and there was a guy by the name of Brad, who was Japanese. In origin, he's basically Japanese.
Yeah.
And the other guy is Chinese. So apparently to black people, I'm a fan.
There's also racial wars between
them, yes. And so because of the how
Eastern
Japan
countries,
how
yeah.
Japan actually colonized China and all these things. So this guy was still carrying that hatred and harbored that thing. And so he approaches this guy and he finds out later that he hated that guy up to a point where he actually finished school hating that guy with a passion. And it's primarily because of the inheritance of the past. Sometimes it depends. I guess the question is not what happened in the past, but how you present it.
And how you actually address the situation moving forward.
Exactly.
Because it all goes back to our democracy. You know, I always say this with our democracy, like it's more like we took the first step to democracy. After that, we just relaxed instead of like addressing these issues. That's why to date we still have such problems of racism. Like you said earlier on, we started hogging your wealthy EU. That's why like
Exactly.
it's one thing. And then we think it's white privilege. It's not white privilege. The problem is with us as individuals at the end of the day, of the real talkers. And my man, you said you had a topic before we actually touch on this issue. Before the elections, DA with the phonics issue, if you remember.
Oh yeah.
After that phonics incident where DA put up posters and the posters were saying the ANC called you racist and us we are calling you heroes. Like, you know, this leads me to the statement I'm about to make.
Okay.
Like, are South Africans dumb or what? Especially if you are black voting for DA at the moment.
The question becomes, it goes back to this thing of the advert that you had of Gareth.
It was more like, that's a podcast, by the way. It
Yeah.
was an interview.
Yes. And the question becomes, who are you actually trying to attract?
Yeah.
Remember, this thing actually popped up when elections were about to commence.
Yeah.
And when it popped up, it became this thing of what's going to happen next. And ultimately resulting in what? DA actually got the people who they wanted.
Yeah, because, you know, that's what I feel like even with the recent municipal election. You know, the most stupidest thing, the most dumbest thing we as black people did, we chose not to vote while white people went out in numbers to vote. That's why at the moment you see parties like FF Plus, DA leading,
Are actually gaining numbers.
yeah,
in terms
even
of
these
the
two gents, they
political
are part of the problem. These ones, these two here, these ones.
and the votes are already forfeit.
Yeah, you see.
The ruling party. It becomes one particular thing, which is at what point do we understand the power that we have?
Yeah.
But yes. Let me show you how broken we are as black people right now amongst each other. Have you ever heard the comment, "Hey mara mnyama" from a black person?
Yes.
Have you ever heard the comment, mnyama from a black person? You are black, but you're like mara mnyama.
Especially how about that
And it's not because of the racial issue within the matter, it is because of, should I say, the shame that we carry over the fact of the color of our skin and how our fellow counterparts, who are black as well, are conducting themselves. Exactly. Because I won't lie, guys. I won't lie. Well, when it comes to certain behavioral traits and stuff like that, to other races, we're just primal.
You know, I once attended this, I think it was at church. It was June 16, and there was this guy from Skin Star, man.
Yeah.
What's his name?
He played the character of a PI.
Yeah, private investment. You know, this guy and actually made a valid point. To date, I still make reference to that point.
Okay.
You know, it was like, you know, as black people, we are quick to say white privilege.
Yeah.
This, and we are broke, we are poverty, this, poverty, that. But come month end, just take a trip to the mall. When you get there, you'll find us filling up these roads with unnecessary things. And then tomorrow we're quick to play balls on it. You know, those kinds of white
Exactly.
privilege.
Exactly.
While forgetting, we also have the capacity to do these things for our own self. What I'm trying to say, Kehore, like, it's high time we stop this thing of like when we see white people moving forward, we're pointing fingers. We need to do our own things. We are capable of doing such things, man. This thing, man, there and there, when the other race is moving, like complain. For instance, not unless you are hating on Somalians and Indians just because you are failing to maintain your black businesses. So, you child profit, you do these things, your business collapse, you blame Nigerians for coming and taking your jobs. How can a Spaniard say wow?
And that's the problem, which is, at what point does a black-owned business survive?
Yeah.
Because, and at what point, and what's the thought process of a black person actually pushing a business? Are they thinking that they're going to get rich? Or are they thinking that they're just delivering a service? Not just to put bread on the table, but to also put bread on other people's tables. Prior to, I think it was early stages when, before when we could still buy half a loaf of bread at various exactly. And these guys, when they came in, they saw opportunities. They realized that black people are so profit-oriented and money-oriented that they would do whatever it takes and even hike prices up so high that it becomes difficult for us as consumers to actually buy. And so it was so high that it's not even funny, even during these times of xenophobic attacks.
Yeah.
And you start to wonder, where's your loyalty at?
Take one example, that's already lockdown, just to show you how we as blacks operate. During lockdowns, when they shut down those, like, they announced those lockdown regulations, no alcohol will be sold, no alcohol consumption. As a race, we were overcharging each other.
Exactly.
You know, and that's one thing I fail to understand. How do you charge someone, 300 for the bottle? And then when we went to this white-owned restaurant, my nigga, I won't mention names, but you would actually buy the bottle local at a normal price. Like, you see such things. And then you come back to the Woodball like a Russian bag. Russian bag is 150. We don't buy that 400. So, you see such things. They are also a problem.
And it was black market, no?
Yeah.
It was black market.
Like, it became an issue. That's why I saw for you as a race, it still has a long way to go.
Okay, then I have a question for you prior to the conclusion. Which is what?
Yeah.
If you dated someone out of your race, with an Indian cousin, okay, I won't touch much on India because of Indians are quite strict.
The most of this.
But if you dated someone outside of your race, and you brought them home, how receptive would your family be? Let's not even go far and try to make presumptions. Let's just put it here. How receptive would your family be? Just so that we can at least scale from each other's families.
You know, from my own point of view, I feel like, okay, from my parents and like my siblings, they wouldn't have a problem.
Okay.
The problem will now be with the uncles and everyone that's back at home, because you know how uncles are when it comes to tradition and how they want everything to be done that way.
So they're deeply culturally orientated.
Yeah.
Okay.
For instance, and they won't be global. That's gonna be a problem. Okay. And that's something we have seen with other tribes happening, you know. Like where you have such problems where like, okay, maybe for instance in most cases, you know, majority of white people, but it's like a bad thing, they don't have like a niche place where they call home. Home is the best for them. And these people, like, these things of livestock being slaughtered, that's animal cruelty to them.
To them, yes.
Yeah. So
but here's one thing, and it's something so profound. I just wanted to tell you before I forget. I was talking to this guy called you know him?
The farmers.
Yeah, and he said something extremely profound. And every time when I talk to that guy, I listen to him extremely attentively. Yeah. So we have this thing that's happening in church called integration.
Yeah.
And now he mentions this one particular thing, which is sometimes we as black people, before we actually take action towards something, is, for an example, let's say you live in Kabush, and then you're like, my children are better off living in well-privileged areas, like Krugerville, North, or Reimsig, and all these things. And then you move to that particular place. And when you move there, you're like, yeah, I'm still black. You're still carrying this black notion that uphumekazi, izinto ezinjalo, and so on and so forth. The question becomes, who conforms to who? If you have to perform a ritual or something like that where livestock has to be slaughtered and all these things, where are you going to slaughter it? At a place where it's predominantly white? Or back home, Lao Pumakon?
And they knowing how we tend to live also our lifestyles and
exactly.
How sharpa A2 sharpile speaker, you see cops pulling through.
Exactly.
Like, hey, you are making noise, that's noise pollution. $10. That's why I once asked this question. I was like, you know, sometimes the problem that we have as a race, we want to imitate the lifestyle of whites and these Western countries. We are forgetting our culture, our traditions. That's where the problem is at. And for as long as, like I said earlier on, we keep on treating these people like gods, they'll keep on treating us like this.
And I guess at some point we'll have this conversation of what's this? The talk of culture and everything. How far are we in terms of culture, or how near are we in terms of culture? But I guess that's another episode for Real Talk With AKAY.
Because right now time is run out here. Because they wanna lead the minutes that I wabona for real. But apart from that, Real Talkers, it's been an honor having you on the show, and don't forget to follow us on all our social media platforms using the hashtag Real Talk With AKAY. On Facebook it's at Real Talk With AKAY, and on Instagram it's at Real Talk With AKAY, and also on Twitter, my man. Apart from that, it's been an honor having you on the show as we are signing out. In Makati Beki Wini, Iteto, in Dayando.